Now let me show you something really interesting. So we go to account screen.js. Now look at this line over here. Every time we want to get the current user, we have to use the context hook and pass auth context as an argument. Now there's nothing wrong with this, but wouldn't that be nicer if we had a custom hook that we could use like this? So instead of importing the context hook and auth context, we would only import our custom hook. Let me show you how to do this. So here in the auth module, we add a new file called useAuth. Here we define a function called useAuth and export it straight away. So export default. Now in this function, we should do what we are doing over here. So we use the context hook and pass auth context as an argument. Now we destructure the result to get user and set user, and then return them over here. Pretty simple, right? Now back to account screen. Let's replace this with use auth. Our app should work exactly like before. Let's verify it. So here's our app. Let's go to the account screen, and here's the current user. Beautiful. Now let's take this to the next level. Look at the handle logout function. Here we're setting the current user to null and then removing the token from the storage. We can encapsulate these details inside our custom hook. Let me show you. So over here, I'm going to define a function called logout and then move this logic to our new function. So we set the current user to null. Now here we need to access the auth storage. So let's import it on the top. Import auth storage from storage. Again, because currently we are inside the auth module or auth domain of our app, both the context and storage modules are right next to us, okay? So here's our logout function. Now, let's export it from here. Save. Back over here. So we don't need the set user function anymore. Let's get the logout function and call it right here. In fact, we don't even need this function. It's unnecessary. We can call logout right here. So when we handle the onPress event of this menu, here we pass a function and call logout. As simple as that. So let's get rid of this function. Good. Now on the top, look, we no longer need the context hook, so delete. And we don't need auth context and auth storage either. So our code is cleaner. This component or this screen is purely responsible for the UI. All the business logic is moved to our custom hook. Now we no longer need to export set user. So we only have user and logout. Using the same technique, we can refactor the login screen and move the login logic over here. So let's go to login screen. So here in the handle submit function, the moment the user logs in, first we have to decode their token to get a user object. Then we have to set the current user and then store their token. These three lines are the business logic of the login functionality. They don't really belong here. We should move them to our custom hook. So I'm going to select these three lines, cut. Now back over here, let's define a new function called login. Paste them here. Here we need to decode the token. So first let's import JWT decode from JWT-decode. Now we need to add a parameter here, auth token, and then pass it over here. Next, we need to set the user. So we call the set user function directly, and then we need to store the token. We already have auth storage here. Let's replace this argument with auth token. Good. Finally, let's export our new function. Login. Good. Now back to the login screen. So we no longer need to import use context and auth context. We can simply use our custom hook. Here we get the login function and call it over here with result.data. Now, if you don't like to call this function like this, If you think this is ambiguous, you don't have to use object destructuring here. You can simply store the result in this object and then call auth.login. That's another approach. Now let's go to the top and clean up some code. So we don't need the context hook, delete. We don't need the decode function either. Good. And we no longer need auth context and auth storage either. So our code is a lot better. It's a lot cleaner. When you separate the concerns in your code always looks really simple and clean. If you have a lot of code in one module, if you have a lot of import statements, it's very likely that you haven't separated the concerns properly. Okay? So let's test our app one more time. I'm going to log out, log back in. And perfect.